You wanted the best, but you're shit out of luck. Welcome to the KissFAQ podcast. We're here to waste some of your time and hopefully entertain you for a little bit. So thank you for letting us into your head. Hope we don't do any damage. Welcome to episode 1 of the KissFAQ podcast. Thank you for spending time with us today. I'd like to introduce you to our panel. From Sweden, we have Daniel Westman, and from Florida, Nigel.
Hello.
Daniel, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Well, hello, my name is Daniel. I'm from Sweden, actually the north of Sweden, Lapland, if you've heard of it. I became a Kiss fan back in 1985. We were in a tent, and a guy played Heavens on Fire for me, and things have never been the same since then. My first album was Animalize and Asylum. I got them at the same time. My favorite Kiss album, this is hard, but I guess I would say Creatures of the Night or Dressed to Kill. And my favorite member is, without a doubt, Paul Stanley.
My name's Nigel. I'm from Florida, Fort Myers area. I got into Kiss when I was about 12 years old through Kiss Meets the Phantom. My dad had it recorded on VHS, and he pulled it out one day, and I took a look at it, and I loved it because I loved the X-Men, and I loved superheroes and the Beatles, and the first, opening to Phantom of the Park was where I became a fan. I was like, this is everything I like all combined into one. And so from there, I started looking at the music and everything, and the first album I got, I think, was You Wanted the Best, which is an odd first pick, but it was new at the time, and I got that, and my first legitimate album that came out when it was new was Psycho Circus. And I have an affinity towards that, and a lot of people hate it, but I like it. Probably half nostalgia value, but I still think the songs are good. I think a lot of them are. What drags it down is just probably the drama that happened behind the scenes with Peter Nace and all that session player stuff. But not knowing that, I would say outside of 2 or 3 songs, that's a great album.
Who's your favorite member?
Definitely Gene. It's stereotyped to say, but his backstory and everything, where he came from, and his fascination of horror, old movies, the Beatles, everything combined into one, so. And every time I've ever met him, he's been the nicest member I've ever met every single time. So that only adds to him in my book.
Absolutely. Well, as you guys know, I'm admin. Well, actually, my name's Julian, and the KissFAQ is all my fault. I became a fan in, December 85, just turning 14, with Asylum and the 3 videos from the album on MTV. They just caught my interest at a time, along with Motley Crue, and on my birthday, went down and bought Theater of Pain and Asylum at my local Kmart. So that was my entry into the Kiss world, even though I was slightly aware of them before that. My favorite Kiss album, I'm going to cop out. Alive. You get the best of the first 3 albums in one shot.
Studio album.
If it's a studio album, I'll take Rock and Roll over. Love the production. Love the material. It's the one, and there's a thread right now on the board about Eddie Kramer and his production. It's the one that I think best captures the band's sound of all the original 6 studio albums.
Yeah, I forgot to mention my favorite one. I can't choose. There's just so much. There's so much. There's so many high points, and they're all different. So, and you have a new favorite every week. Whatever you're in the mood for. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, depends on your mood. Yep. And as for my favorite band member, it was always Paul Stanley. Always saw him as the heart and soul of the band, even if Gene was the face. So Paul Stanley, he's the man. Kept the band going all those years. I have a great deal of respect for him. So let's go straight into our topic. The way we're going to do this podcast, everyone, is we're just going to pick, basically one topic to chat about and see where we go with that. So first topic up for discussion is which album in the catalog do you think should be the next Deluxe treatment, and what would you like to see with it, and how do you like to see it done? So, Daniel, take us away.
When it comes to a Deluxe treatment, I liked the way they did it on Love Gun, that they tried to incorporate a lot of different stuff, like the song Love Gun, that Paul showed how to do it and such. But the main thing is, if you could somehow get new unreleased songs in good quality. That's what you should be doing. And I remember reading way back when I was just a kid about Revenge, and I always loved the sound on that record. I'm not necessarily loving all the songs. I like the first one, Unholy, but the rest I don't know. But the sound is so great. And Bruce Kulick, he always talked about that track he had somewhere. I don't think they had vocals on it. I would like to hear more from that record because I like the sound of it. I like the attitude. Unfortunately, they didn't manage to do a lot of great songs to me. Unholy is just great on record, terrible live, of course. They have never been able to perform it live. Domino, kind of cool, live, doesn't do anything for me. So that's kind of a strange album. In Sweden, over here, they managed to make the press believe that it was their comeback album in every sense of the word. In every sense of the word, it was better sounding. There were better songs, and people actually incorporated Kiss information into the reviews. So it got great reviews over here, but I guess it didn't do too well. But I would like to see whatever they have from the Revenge sessions. That would be great to see.
I think that the look of the Revenge era really combines with the production and there's a few clunkers on that album, but you look at the image, their vision of what the band was, and after all those years, of trend hopping and trying to find their way and looking ridiculous sometimes, it was like, okay, this is non-makeup Kiss. This captures what they were going for in the 70s, just in the 90s, and people like, oh, that's what they looked like. No, that was just as much a costume as anything that they wore in the 80s. It looked more like what Kiss was supposed to be without the makeup instead of trying to follow all the trends.
Yeah. So
great album, great album.
Yeah, a deluxe album of Revenge with some new songs, great sounding demos. You've all heard the demos with different lyrics and so on. And I like they really tried to make it a dark album. I don't know if they managed to reach the heights of darkness like Creatures, where they had a lot of kind of dark songs. But they Spit, for example, they tried to have dark titles. It's kind of, that song should be called Spit, but they tried. It was like they were looking for, where do we have a dark or dirty word that we could use, and then they picked that one. That's the title. So they really went for it. But I guess it was in the time of Metallica making it big with the Black Album, and Gene Simmons almost became sort of a James Hetfield, look-alike almost. But it was a great look for him. It was the best since '82, without a doubt.
How'd you feel when he did that Monsters of Rock, whatever that was, like a couple of years ago? He tried to bring that look back. That was that's something I never expected to see ever.
But I think it was ballsy, and I have to admit I kind of liked it. And when watching him on stage with those, I think there were some guys from, like the bassists from Guns N' Roses, or a few other guys, Sebastian Bach and some other guys. But when you watched them live, I was actually surprised. I think Gene was the best one live, and I've always liked the way Sebastian works his audience. But I think it looked great. Of course, he was kind of fat, but that was the first time I understood that he was wearing a wig during the Revenge tour, wasn't he?
During Revenge? I don't know.
But if you look at the hair on that South American tour, when was it? Yeah. 2011, 10, something like that. I don't know.
He couldn't come out in his sport coat, his sport coat and his sunglasses.
If you look at his wig, it's like exactly the same as back in '92. I
never thought of that. I always just assumed that was his hair, just with extensions or something put in, but it's possible. It really is. I didn't think about that before.
So Revenge is it for me. What about you?
I'd have to say it's a stock answer, I'm sure, but Hotter Than Hell needs, hopefully the elements are still there to do a proper redo of that album, but if it exists, it's because that, I would say, is the best Kiss album. It just needs a little bit better production. I mean, especially when you put them on the greatest hits albums and you get to the Hotter Than Hell, it's like it goes from Dress to Kill to, Lick It Up production, and then it goes to Hotter Than Hell. It sounds like it was recorded in somebody's garage, and the songs are all there.
Well, there's a story of Ace actually building an amp out of a cardboard box back in at the time they were doing the album, and messing around with that because it sounds like it was recorded in a cardboard box. I just pray that they have the original multi-tracks and they converted them to digital, because they could run some really cool studio trickery on those tracks, and maybe, who knows, maybe fix Ace's tone a bit, because that's where that album just gets killed in its sound, and it's the guitars. I mean, the vocals are great, but just the sound of the instruments is absolutely, I find it atrocious, but the material, kind of lifts it up into the acceptable.
Over time, you get used to it, and I can't imagine that album sounding like, Dress to Kill or anything else, but those songs are so strong. That whole album is so strong. It's just, when
Absolutely.
You heard Coming Home on Unplugged, it was like hearing that song for the first time. It was like, I never even took that song as, it's kind of a song you forget about on the album later on, but when you hear it unplugged, it's like, oh, this is really good. And that's definitely the go-to version of that song I listen to, and I just can't imagine, electrically what that would have sounded like if they were able to bring up the quality a little bit on that original album.
I don't know, MTV Unplugged is the version of that song I listen to. That just absolutely kills. But then again, just about every song on Unplugged is fantastic. So what would you want to see? I mean, I don't think you necessarily want a resurrected version of Hotter Than Hell. What sort of bonus material would you hope for?
Resurrected as in going back in and remixing the album, you mean? Or
if you're leaving it alone and just putting it back out there, remastered, filled with bonus material, what would be kind of the key stuff you'd be interested in them adding on to a second disc?
Well, any demos, anything, even stuff that's out there already, just better quality. Obviously, I would say if there's not a whole lot of demo stuff floating around for that album, one of those shows from, 70, 74, even some of those things that just leaked, although that might be put on the Deluxe for the first album. What was that, Amityville show? That's just amazing. And, I would love an edition that had a DVD with it, even if it was Wonderland, or even if it was something, that we already have, just put together in a Hotter Than Hell package. I would definitely.
And there's demos. I mean, Jeff and Kurt wrote about some of them. Demos of Mainline, Parasite All the Way, and Who's Your Baby. Obviously got to choose.
Well, then that,
Yeah,
definitely.
and who knows what other songs maybe, because obviously there's other stuff in the vaults that we may not necessarily know about. And, I think everyone wants to hear Peter Criss's 7-minute drum solo, right?
If it still exists, if it's still out there. Throw it on.
I'm not a Peter Criss guy, I went, or not me, but like 50% of the audience back at when they did the reunion tour back in Sweden. I was attending 2 concerts, 35,000 a night. It was great. But when Peter Criss did his solo, it was like half the audience went to pee. I don't know.
What year was that? What tour?
97.
Oh, okay. I would say out of all those, he definitely had the most fan audience interaction, because that thing on Second Coming, when Gene was Gene was teaching him how to do that. Yeah, exactly. I don't think he did that. I don't think he elaborated that production he was doing as much on the later tours. At least I don't remember it. But
well, to me, as a somewhat of a drummer, I was crushed when they. Well, first you heard the Live 3, and you saw the concerts from Japan and Australia in '95. Eric Singh killing it, and then my first chance of seeing the band was in '97, and Peter Criss playing Deuce is not. I should say Peter Criss. The second version of Peter Criss playing Deuce was nowhere near how it sounded with Eric Singer or the young Peter Criss. So I remember being kind of disappointed in the way they sounded, but it was a great show, you know.
I'm biased because just, I was, about 12, 13, 11, 12 when the reunion happened, and so anything was Kiss to me. Now I can kind of look back and see, Peter didn't play the same as he played in the 70s, and Eric Singer is a more technical guy, but, when I watch it, it's all Kiss. It's all...
I don't know. Does it matter, the technicality, for a band like Kiss, how technical their drummer is? And I want to kind of draw a comparison between Kiss and AC/DC, that AC/DC's number one drummer, obviously, was Phil Rudd, with a very basic kind of drumming approach. And then they had Simon Wright and, God, who was the other guy? The Razor's Edge. So, Chris Slade, finally get there. Highly technical drummer, Chris Slade. And they bring Rudd back in 95, and they're like, we missed him. These other guys were great, and they could do everything that you wanted, but we just wanted that basic beat. And I kind of think of Peter like that. He's not a tremendously technical drummer. He's no Neil Peart. But he's got some nuances in his drumming. Everyone says things like jazz influence, but I don't know enough about jazz to even know if that's legit. But he's definitely got influences, being older, from a different era than, say, the Eric Carrs and the Eric Singers. And that flavor...
You listen to Sing Sing with a Swing, the Gene Krupa song from the late 30s. He has a little drum solo in there, and that sounds, to me, a lot like Peter's solo on Alive. If you pull that song up, there's a little drum break in it, and that's where he came from. So I can see that perspective, that big band swing feel in some of the stuff, and definitely his solos. But as far as the drumming in the songs are considered, I wouldn't hear any real big band swing in it.
Yeah, there's some little elements in the fills. Yeah.
To me, there's a difference here. When I became really interested in Kiss, I started in the mid 80s, but it wasn't until the late or early 90s that I actually was old enough to understand, technicalities, like how to make a certain drum pattern and so on. And then I remember listening to Live 3, and this, you have to remember, this was at a time when people almost ridiculed you for being a Kiss fan, as they had been doing for quite a while. And we were seen as dinosaurs, and, well, your band, you don't sound like Soundgarden. Alice in Chains is much better than your band. But then Eric Singer kind of updated the sound. I like that he managed to bring the old songs into a new era somewhat. And that's what I mean with his playing on Juice and what other songs did he... Well, when he played Parasite, I'd never really liked that one. He kind of updated them. And at that time, it was much needed because...
That was what you needed, yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Well, if you watch on the Arsenio Hall show...
With Eric Singer, kind of...
If you watch the Arsenio Hall
that's one
performance...
of my absolute favorite performances.
That's, to me, just as good as anything from the 70s, just performance-wise. Some people say that Eric Singer overplays the songs, but that was what the time called for, and now he plays, I don't know, I feel like he plays now with a balance of the two. I feel like he adds his own personality into the songs, but he plays them pretty legitimately to the originals as well. I feel like it's a healthy balance, whereas in the 90s, I think he was trying to overplay to match the style of that time period. So,
yeah, I guess that's the whole point. But at the time, in the 90s, I wanted him to play like that because it felt like we were, at the same level as the popular bands somehow. If he would have played the songs like Peter Criss back then, I don't think it would have worked. Now we are all into this classic rock, people tend to look at old rock bands as kind of with a lot of nostalgia, and people don't want them to try to sound like anything else than they were from the beginning. So for him to play like that now, I'm not sure it would work as well as it did in the 90s.
No, he modernized the sound in the 90s, and he kept, or the band kept the songs pretty much the same as they had been in the 70s, just with new flavor, new seasoning. In the 80s, the band had changed the songs to try and stick with those times with faster musicians, so the tempo went up, and it completely changed the character of the songs. In the 90s, you still have the character, but you've made it a little darker, a little bit more injected with attitude. That went with the Revenge kind of feel that they kept. I mean, Revenge stuck around basically 92 to 95 in terms of image. So that's where he really went with that. Now I feel like he's a neutered kitty cat. You know, he's kind of, you feel the limit that he's not doing a fill. He's not doing something
Safe.
here. He's keeping Kiss nice and safe, and maybe presenting it how people expect to remember it.
Another thing,
as we get more and more, I guess, people just coming in with the
another thing
legacy.
about that is, I don't know if you saw that or listened to that interview that one of the podcasts did with him. It was a great interview. He was very open, and he talked about nowadays he sings on every song. He sings backups on every song, so then he can't play the same way. I'm not sure if that is all of the truth, but it might be have something to do with the way he's playing nowadays. I'm sure he's able to play it like he did back in the 90s, but I guess when he's singing and people wants to hear the classic sound, there's really no reason for him to do the way I would like him to play it.
Yeah, he's critical now on the background, the vocals. That is so
Oh
key
yeah,
for the show.
especially with the Paul issues, he carries a lot of those. I mean, he started doing that around the Unplugged, when he really sang Nothing to Lose. That was the first time that he realized, I guess, he could do a lead by himself. He didn't sing any lead vocals in the Revenge tour, I don't think. But yeah, he said on that Unplugged, he was just as shocked as anybody that he could get a chance to sing and do Nothing to Lose. And that's when I think they really realized what a strong singer Eric was. And I mean, you even go towards later on when Monster came out, and that's one of my favorite songs on Monster is All for the Love of Rock and Roll, because he kills that song. I mean, Paul could have done his own version of it, but I think the Eric vocal really, because I feel like if Paul had done that song, I feel like it would have gotten meshed in with all the rest of Paul's songs on the album, but it really separates it, and that makes it an Eric song, and one of my favorites on that. So
maybe we'll get a Paul version on the deluxe edition of Monster.
Yeah, have you actually said, have you presented your deluxe version? You haven't said anything about that.
No, I haven't, not yet.
We've just talked about a lot of other stuff, yeah.
We've gone off into a tangent into Revenge, so, tying back to yours. So here we've had two. We've had Revenge and Hotter Than Hell. I'd say those are two very similar albums in kind of where they fit in the catalog. They're kind of structurally tough albums, a little bit more aggressive. The one thing I wanted to go back to Hotter Than Hell with is what other stuff is in the vaults, and maybe people out there have some idea. I've listed the stuff that's been publicized, but is there, a demo of Hotter Than Hell? What's always bothered me with that album is the early Circus magazine suggestion that the album was going to be called The Harder They Come, until another act released that. If you put The Harder They Come kind of structurally on top of Hotter Than Hell, was that song originally called The Harder They Come and Paul rewrote it as Hotter Than Hell? That's the only thing I really ponder with that album. I'd love to hear a lot more of the studio work on that.
It's hard.
And
it's hard to really say what I would want, because I don't really know, what's out there that's not already been accounted for, or what still exists, or what, is in a vault. But
what about the
you don't really know.
Destroy version?
I mean, I'm sure there's people out there that know a lot more than I do about what's unreleased and what's available that isn't being circulated. But
is there a possibility that, the version you liked, Phantom of the Park, so you should want rip, and destroy? That one. That's a
yeah,
thick
well, you're
one.
right. Where is that? I would love to hear
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
It's nowhere to be found in its entirety.
Mhm.
I haven't heard it.
So, Nigel, if you got into Kiss because of Kiss Meets the Phantom, you must have been in for a rude shock when you heard Peter's real voice.
Oh, I didn't even, honestly, it's something I didn't even know about until I think I read it in one of the books. Because, those are things I didn't really put two and two together. Someone's singing voice could be different than the voice that they use when they speak. So I didn't really think about it.
Also,
I can't remember where I found out about that for the first time. I probably was Extreme Close-Up, I think, is when they mentioned that. But there is a video on YouTube of Kiss Meets the Phantom NBC commercial, and they use a clip where Peter's using his real voice. And I thought that was cool when he says, "Apes is more like it." It was Peter's actual voice, and I think that's still on YouTube. But it makes you wonder if that audio is still existing somewhere. But his accent was so thick, or he mumbled, or didn't speak clearly, so they had to. They always say he never showed up to do the looping, but I always just wonder if his accent was too thick that nobody could understand what he was saying. So it might be a combination of the two. But Aquaman is his voice. The Super Friends, Aquaman.
Another shock must have been that Ace really isn't a black guy.
The stunt double.
Yeah.
Did anyone ever
Terrible.
track him down? Him?
I don't know. Didn't someone say they had? But then I heard something else that said he'd passed away or something. You hear all sorts of stories from all different angles.
It's easy to say that you know him or can get in touch with him, or that he's hiding out in mom's attic.
Say he's with Vinny somewhere. All these people you want to interview, but you can't figure out where they are.
Yeah, I think we'll have this as a Vinny-free episode, even though we've picked Revenge as one of the albums that we'd like to see worked on. All right, my album. I would really love a deluxe edition of Rock and Roll Over, and it's not just because it's one of my favorite albums. It's the material that ties in with that album. Is there a version of Paul doing Hard Luck Woman back there, a demo, instead of Peter? Obviously we know from one of the other podcasts, Three Sides, that there's a reel of material from that album with Gene doing Baby Driver, which would be awesome to hear. But there's also Gene and Joe Perry doing Mongoloid Man, which I've not heard. Obviously I would love to. So, there's that. There's Queen for a Day. That falls in, I think, under or in between Destroyer and Rock and Roll Over. So if it's unfinished,
who cares?
Who cares?
Yeah.
Put it up there or finish it.
Mm-hmm.
Do something with it. Get it out there. All of Gene's demos from that period, stuff like Rotten to the Core. It can all fall under 75 through 77. There's so many different versions of him doing like Howling for Your Love or I Don't Want No Romance. All the stuff that became Sweet Pain. So there's a ton of bonus material that could go onto a Rock and Roll Over album, with it being 1976, and that's kind of the height of the band for me. Right through those final shows in Japan in early 77, that's the end kind of the classic period. So for me, it's really representative of the band at their height before they went into kind of the Love Gun Alive 2 era, which is, you see the increase in kids, kind of the more cartoonish representation of the band for me. Also, bonus material is obviously the recordings that were done as the band rehearsed for the tour. So with that, Hard Luck Woman obviously being performed live electrically would be awesome. And certainly I don't think any worse quality than the dreadful interview or teaching demo used on Love Gun Deluxe.
True.
Love them, leave them. apparently performed early on in the tour. Therefore, it must have been rehearsed. What else? All of those songs from the album that they rehearsed would, just kill. And I don't know about video. That's just not my forte. Is there a show that they could, bundle with it? Always thought they should have bundled a show with Love Gun Deluxe, the DVD, rather than having, 4 versions of Love Gun in one package.
Yeah.
I think they really could have,
Well, that's what I was getting at.
made it
That's
appealing.
what I was thinking about, too, is just, I feel like they're not going to do too many more of these deluxe editions just because when they come out, there's already so much stuff that the fans already have. There's always 1 or 2 things that you want that make you buy it. But, it was hard to find. You have to get it online. You can't go into a store and get it. So how many sales can these deluxe editions be getting? Because the casual fan is not picking these up because they can't find
Love
them.
Gun Deluxe sold 4,000 copies its first week. That's hardly going to motivate a label. That there's an economic, benefit to releasing it, or the effort that goes in. There's a lot of work that goes into putting the booklet together, the stories, researching the photos for the package, obviously the rights for any material, even if Universal owns it under the contract or however any of that legal side of stuff works. There is effort. And while it's easy to criticize the one that they've done, as obviously I have criticized it, I do respect and acknowledge that there's a lot of effort by people to bring these products. They gotta pick more wisely. If they're gonna do albums, they gotta be core albums that are really gonna appeal and get the material on there that hopefully we haven't heard. And I hadn't heard both of those Gene songs in that format on Love Gun. So there's a lot out there. Do Creatures. Come on. That's another probably a major album, but who's out there to buy it again? What are they going to put on it to entice you? Demos of Nowhere to Run, maybe. Back on the
Vinnie
Street.
Vincent cover.
Yeah, the long lost.
They have tried that one a few times to release it. You remember that picture they used back in '85 with Bruce on the cover? The ass shot on the back.
Well, it's funny because, no matter what cover's been released, it's never the person that's actually playing on the record. There's been 2 covers that have been put out. Bruce is on one and Ace is on the other, and neither of them really had anything to do with it. So.
Yeah, but I just read on KissFAQ they discussed whose ass is on the back of Creatures Tonight. I think they thought it was Gene Simmons.
Nothing like.
I always thought it was Gene. Actually, I tried. To be honest, I tried not to look at the back cover. I wasn't sure who it was. And I really found it rather distracting. But maybe it was Paul. He likes to have parts of his body to have pictures taken of. Going to the elder, his hand. Maybe he wanted his butt on an album cover.
Nothing like 3 guys sitting around talking about whose ass is on the back of an album. It's probably not a woman.
We're straying away some. Yeah, but what you said about releasing deluxe versions, and you talked about video, should they release video as well? If they don't put up any money and buy stuff from TV station, there won't be anything new to us, the fans of Kiss. They have to be, every TV station at the time, if we talk about in the early 80s, the Creatures tour, for example, they could shoot for like 1 or 2 songs in the beginning. And there are some stuff that has leaked on the internet. You can see snippets of it in videos from, on YouTube as well, but not in perfect mint condition. So if they could actually pay some TV network and buy the first 2 songs from a few tours, it would be great to see. To me, I would like that a lot. Just the snippets from the Creatures of the Night era, they have 1 camera in the pit, but it looks kind of cool. Anyway, I would love to see that. Just put together a few,
Footage from Creatures would make most diehard fans pass out in joy. They'd be I think we'd go nuts for that sort of thing. That's one of the holy grails is just to see some really good footage from that tour.
Well, my question is, do they, all right, let's say the TV stations still have this footage. Gene and Paul don't want to pay. They want it, for free, or they want it, Gene wants to give you a gold album that he'll sign or whatever, like on that Toy Hunter show. I mean, I don't know how they deal with the negotiations for that with the studios. I know when it comes to fans that have material, we'll accept it for free, or we'll give you a meet and greet, but I don't think they want to pay for their own footage or their own material that is owned by somebody else, which is why the Midnight Special footage on Kissology is not the greatest, because they didn't want to.
Yeah, and if you're only going to sell 4,000 copies, why would you pay for the footage? They've got to either own it outright, be able to, make some sort of arrangement, because, Destroyer Resurrected, come on, that was a completely different thing. That had the original Ace solo in Sweet Pain, and it didn't sell more than, I think that was 3,000 or something, or maybe it was a bit more, but both well under 5-figure first week. What's your second week going to be after a 4,000 week sale? You'll be lucky still to be 1,000.
I never found that in a single store. Barnes & Noble, Best Buy, Walmart, Target, never had it. So, how many, you have to know it's out there, and you have to search for it yourself to pick it up. It's not like something that you can just come across and pick up. And, the diehards are going to go find it, because they keep up on all this stuff, but, you can't sell that many if you don't put it out there. They had the internet commercial, but I don't know. I thought that really bothered me, because these are really cool releases, and I thought, well, if they're distributing them like this, they're not going to sell, because you can't find them and nobody knows about them.
Oh,
unless you search for them yourself.
Hey, so joining late to the party is Alex. Hey, Alex, can you hear us?
Good. Hey there. Sorry,
hey, Alex.
Hey, thanks a lot for calling in. So we've got our fourth member of the panel today, and introduce yourself with who you are, where you're from, what year you became a fan, your favorite album, your favorite member.
Sounds good. Well, my name is Alex. I'm from Washington, D.C. originally, but I'm currently attending college at Brigham Young University in Idaho, so I'm actually filming in Rexburg, Idaho, and it's like snowing outside and like 25 degrees out there. It's just a little cold. I was kind of brought into the Kiss Army, if you will. My dad was a fan growing up, so I kind of just grew up pulling out his records off his collection and staring at the album covers as a little kid for the longest time. I think my favorite album, it rotates between which ones I like. I think my favorite album, usually at the moment, I usually kind of stick with The Elder or Carnival of Souls. I like Carnival of Souls. I think part of it has to do with the mystiqueness behind the album, the mystery, because it was put on the shelf and wasn't out there after it was recorded for the longest time. Plus, it's just a little bit different. And what's going with my favorite member, I really like Bruce Kulick. One of my favorite Kiss memories is coming home after trick-or-treating when I was 6 and watching the MTV Unplugged in '95 with my dad. And I've had the opportunity to meet Bruce Kulick back in 2008. And he was such a gentleman. It was amazing.
Bruce is awesome.
Mm-hmm. I ran into Bruce at a grocery store in California. I was out there on unrelated Kiss things, and I went to use the restroom, and I come out of the restroom, and Bruce and his girlfriend, I guess is his wife now, were shopping, and I was like, well, should I go ask? I already have pictures with him and stuff, and he's out doing his own thing. So I just walked by, like, I knew him. I was like, hey, Bruce. He's like, hey. And I just kept walking. So the guy's grocery shopping. He doesn't want to be bothered by, a fan.
Bruce.
Good guy.
Yeah, Bruce is a good guy, and he's always been important to the band. But my problem with Bruce was that I didn't like what he did live. Musically, it was great. But, he isn't called Bruce for nothing. And actually, Gene and Paul always talks about him back in 84, 85, I guess it was 85, he didn't move around that much, but if you look at the videos, for example, Animal Live and the Detroit 92 show, he's actually moving around a lot back in 85, but not that much in 92, so it's kind of messed up.
He came into his own. Bruce, you know, he came into his own in that respect. He really got the performance angle down after a while. I felt, you know, I enjoy what, but like I said, it's all Kiss to me though. You know, Ace acts a certain way, and Vinny acted a certain way, and Bruce acted a certain way, and you know, I don't really critique the members like that just because they're all different eras and they all have their own look and their own feel. And like I said, you know, Bruce is more of a technical musician and less of a performer, I think. But as far as that's concerned, I feel like he came into his own pretty well later on.
All right, Alex. Let's
Yes,
get it back to you. What is your album, your Kiss catalog album that you would most like them to see a deluxe treatment of, and why?
Well, I think a lot of people would love to see a deluxe treatment of like music from the Elder. But I think for me, I think a great one would be, if they could get the rights, would be Creatures of the Night. I think I think there's some tracks out there. I don't know. I'm not into the whole inner circle, but I would love to just hear maybe some different takes, since they had such a revolving group of guitarists filling in for Ace because he wasn't there. I think there's a lot of alternate takes for the album. I just hope with the project they put a little more effort into it. There's a great band that I like from the 80s. You might know them, Julian, called Big Country.
Yeah, I better Scottish fan.
Yeah, and they released a deluxe edition of The Crossing. I want to say it was like last year, 2 years ago. And their second disc for the deluxe edition had much more tracks than what was given with the Love Gun release. They had a handful of demos, more demos than the Kiss one, plus some remixes. And so I hope with the next one, if Kiss does it, they go through, get some alternate takes. And I've got nothing against the live material, but then don't touch up the live material either. You know, allow it to have the age to it. I don't think any of us would complain if they had a decent version of Rock and Roll Hell live, even if it wasn't soundboard quality to what we would think of a live quality with the Eddie Kramer fixes to it.
Yeah, I think Creatures would make such a great deluxe treatment because it's just it's at the time in the band that they're really transitioning. You know, it's like the end of the Originals chapter. It's the beginning of the Unknown. You know, I want to hear Back on the Streets so badly, but if they wouldn't put Love Bite and Hooligan on a Love Gun deluxe treatment, are they going to put a Vinny song, either with Vinny or Paul Stanley singing it on a Creatures? Mm-hmm. You know, it's kind of the bigger picture, but could we get a full originals, and that's, I guess, Paul, Gene, Eric, and God knows who on guitar doing It's My Life? I would absolutely love a perfectly clear copy of that.
I can't believe that has never made it onto an official album. That's so good. But now I feel like it's going to be compared to the Bon Jovi one. I feel like people are going to think that Kiss ripped off Bon Jovi, you know, because
that is the biggest mistake of the 1980s is Kiss not doing anything with It's My Life. That could have been their anthem. What a song it was.
What about that? But the other song that I felt they really struck out not using on a record was that one for Crazy Nights with Paul singing his, you know, what a great song with him on vocals. It's called, it's not Time Traveler, it's the other one.
Sword and Stone.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. The singing on that demo, oh my.
Someone asked him on the cruise about why he hasn't released all those songs yet, and he just said he didn't think that they were up to snuff. He didn't think not everything that he puts together he wants to be necessarily released if he doesn't like the quality of, which makes sense for Paul because he's such a perfectionist. Gene will throw anything out there. Actually, he doesn't care, but...
Yeah. But I also think he talked about many of the songs they weren't meant to be Kiss songs. He talked about he wrote some of that stuff for other... I mean, I think he tried to shop around a lot of tunes And all he got out of that was that song with Desmond Child. What was it? It was kind of cool.
Wasn't Hide Your Heart one of those two?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Hide Your Heart was one. Best Man for You, Time Traveler. What is it? When Two Hearts Collide.
Yeah.
And some of those, I don't think anyone wants to necessarily hear on an official product. You know, that's just publishing material. See if anyone picked them up. And at one point, I think it was rumored somewhere like targeted at Cher, but who knows?
Nice to hear him, though.
But
You know, I'd rather hear him than not hear him.
Yeah.
I think the sad thing is...
But he did one with Desmond Child. What one he did with Desmond Child, what was it called? They took turns singing. Paul proved who the master was. You remember that one? It was for some soundtrack for a lousy film.
Oh, shocker.
Yeah, that's the one. Kind of cool.
I was going to say, I think the tragedy is that Bruce actually did perform Sword and Stone at a couple solo shows, and there sadly does not exist any good version of those recordings at all.
Speaking of that, you hear he played like, what was it, an Asylum melody or a medley at one of his shows, and that was just awesome. Just to hear those songs, even without Paul singing, but just to hear those songs live was awesome, because where else are you going to hear, all night?
There's a good video from Australia of Bruce performing with a local band who was out there. I think he hooked up with this band to tour Australia. I don't remember the details. And he kills the 80s material. I mean, he injects more attitude in it. His playing has developed so much in those years since. I mean, he's more comfortable as himself, it seems, that when he came out and played that stuff, I was just like watching the TV, watching the DVD and going, wow. What could have been, playing like that then?
I feel he's always been a great player, and just as you said, he's found himself, but he's never been like someone who can make up for the things Paul is doing right now. I mean, Paul is moving around a lot less. Tom is actually picking up some of that. Bruce would just be standing there, but he's always played great, and he's actually written a few good Kiss songs as well. And I remember one interview with him when he was kind of mad at Ron Nevison because he didn't include Sword and Stone, because Bruce had writing credits on that one.
So I guess that gets into, we've had 4 suggestions for albums that would make good deluxe treatments. Crazy Nights, I guess, has to be one as well. For me, that was the album. I remember that one coming out. It was obviously the first album that came out after I became a fan, going down to the store, buying it, putting it in my Walkman, and nearly throwing the Walkman away, going, what on earth is this rubbish?
Going up in my mouth.
Sonically neutered Kiss, after going through the back catalog in the period of a year and hearing the best of Kiss, the worst of Kiss, and then there's Crazy Nights. But as a deluxe edition, there is, Sword and Stone. There's the 87 version of Hide Your Heart. There's, there's Bruce's demos. The original versions. Paul has said how great Crazy Nights sounded as a demo. Put it on a deluxe edition, Paul, and let us hear it. We've heard some of the, like My Way. I don't actually ever want to hear that vocal again, but we know there's that sort of material out there. It would make a great package. With Sword and Stone, that is just, that's another one of the Kiss anthems that, who knows, we can't do anything in hindsight, but it would have been a damn sight better song than a lot of what they released.
Bang Bang, it would have been better than Bang Bang You. And they even did Bang Bang You live. What were they thinking? It's just like the most terrible song ever.
The cover, it's got to be my favorite 80s cover, though. Crazy Nights cover. I love it. I think it looks cool. And I know they did somebody did a Photoshop of the first Kiss album, and they Photoshopped it into the Crazy Nights look. That's awesome.
Really no.
Oh, I love that. Totally.
There's a lot of bad covers from the 80s. We can agree on that. I don't know. The Asylum one? Hello?
Well, that brings me to my question about the deluxe, editions. Now, obviously, for Destroyer Resurrected, they redid the cover and alternate art. I was kind of hoping that the Love Gun would have an alternate art somewhere. I mean, there's the sketches and things inside, but I think it would be cool if they do any more of these deluxe editions to make the cover artwork a little different than the regular release. Because not only would that separate it from the original release, but it would also get, fans from a collector's point of view to want to get the new vinyl with the new alternate cover and all that stuff. I love the Destroyer Resurrected artwork.
And that's what they did.
It's a shame they didn't make the back cover match the front cover design. That kind of thing bothered me with Destroyer. But I wouldn't even call that a deluxe edition. That's just it doesn't have anything to make it deluxe. It's Bob approaching it with modern technology and trying to fix a few things.
How did you feel about that? What's your opinion on that whole thing?
On the album or tinkering with it?
Just the sound quality and how it differs from the original.
Well, with listening to the original for so many decades now, it felt different. So it didn't really fit into my listening habits. I listened to it a few times when it came out, and I doubt I'll ever listen to it again. With the Sweet Pain solo that so much has been made a big deal about with Ace, you hear it once and you're like, that's it? Mm-hmm. Well, no wonder they replaced it. It was nothing spectacular. I thought it was perfectly fine, adequate as a solo. But, there's just nothing to keep me coming back to Destroyer Resurrected. Bob did his thing. He's a wizard. We get to hear some elements throughout the album that we didn't necessarily hear with the original mix. Mm-hmm. The drums sounded fantastic, I thought. But I want to hear the original version because that's 1976. That's everything that they had technology-wise. That was what they wanted in terms of the band saying, oh, I like that sound. Or Bob in 1976, during his heyday, saying, oh, that's what I want. That's what I can do. But as, one of the engineers, I think it was Corky, said to me in an interview, put on a pair of headphones and listen to the original Destroyer. Make sure it's with headphones so that you get the full binaural microphone effect. Then you'll really hear some of the elements in that 76 version, which are a bit more apparent on Resurrected. That's the way to listen to it.
Resurrected, I thought was great with it. Now, I never really researched it. Were those guitars, or was that acoustic guitar in the original mix, just real low, or is that something that they recorded recently to place over it?
That was originally there. That is
okay.
Dick Wagner.
Okay. I mean, I think that's the definitive Beth, in my opinion. I love the combination of the two.
Yeah, you really get to hear him. He's doubling the piano chords on the guitar, and it only really comes through in Resurrected.
Can you hear that at all? I've never heard acoustic in the original at all, ever.
When you think you're hearing something, you usually hear what you think you want to hear. So kind of tough to tell now.
True.
Something completely different. I just have to hear what you guys have to say about this. I guess it's a week ago now when Paul Stanley joined the Foo Fighters on stage. Can we talk briefly about that one, because I'm really into that one.
It was cool.
Yeah,
absolutely.
When I saw that, it really struck me that Paul is a rock star. And even though Foo Fighters are at their height of success, there's really no comparison with Paul Stanley. Even though he's singing at, 75% of, or even if it's that, of his capability, but the way he moves, the way he has found a way of expressing himself without doing the splits, without doing the big moves, without doing his little, that dance with the feet. He's still bringing it, and I really like what he did there, without any makeup, without explosions. It just showed what a true rock star he is, and he has always been. And no matter he's coming across, if you look at Twitter and such, he's kind of bitter, and I don't know if I like his personality as I did back in the day, but he's still a pretty good performer. What do you say?
Nice to hear.
Him walking on stage was like rock god, like Roger Daltrey coming on stage with a bar band. He's Paul Stanley. And obviously Dave Grohl and those guys are a big band. They've got a good catalog. They've got, stature in the industry. That's Paul Stanley coming on stage with you. And I thought, as much as you can get out of a YouTube clip, and we mock it online, I thought he sounded great. That if nothing else, he was able to come out there and just be Paul Stanley. His voice was great. It was powerful. Obviously, it's not 1985, but he sounded great. They performed well, and they did 2 kick-ass songs.
It's good to hear those songs in the original key, too. I've missed that without the down tuning or whatever they're doing now.
A reoccurring issue. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I'm used to it now, but when you go back and you hear it's like, oh yeah, it reminds you of how much better it sounds.
I think the performance was great. I think it shows, and I would go on a cruise if they did a show without the makeup. I think it's time to take the makeup off and do a tour without the makeup again.
That's a whole new can of worms. That'd be...
The only place you get that now is the cruise.
Bring Brett Bruce if you're going to.
Well, it's funny because on the cruise...
It will never happen,
People were begging, Doc did his Q&A, kept asking him just to bring Bruce on. And I guess they considered it for a while, but I think they don't want to, limit Tommy's... They don't want to tell Tommy to take a hike, because I feel... even for a song or two, because I feel like the fan reaction would just be too much. Just like the Hall of Fame thing. I think they're worried about the exact same thing. The people going nuts, and then they're going to get nothing. Let's say they brought Bruce in for 2 songs, and, the next 2 weeks would be nothing but people attacking their Twitter pages with bring Bruce back, bring Bruce back. And I don't think they just don't want to deal with it at this point.
And they should.
But one thing.
Tommy Thayer is the guitarist in Kiss. Yeah. End of topic. For those who do not like Tommy, who are not happy with him wearing Ace's makeup or Eric wearing, get over it. He's the guitarist in Kiss. He's doing the best damn job he can, and you know what? I think he's doing a really damn good job.
And all those songs you hear on the cruise, The Oath, and all those deep cuts, like, that wasn't Gene and Paul's idea. That was Tommy, and maybe to a lesser degree Eric, but Tommy was the one that keeps reminding him, we should do this, we should do this. And eventually...
I have to say one thing about Bruce. Bruce, on a solo tour, performing Kiss songs that he's been involved in. Imagine 15 songs with Bruce. What do you have? King of the Mountain? Awesome. Sword and Stone? Great. You have loads and loads of stuff. I don't know what he's doing playing with that old band, whatever they called, Grand Funk Junkyard.
Well, but you have to think of it this way, too. Could Paul sing all those songs now, though? Would he even want to attempt?
I mean, I don't want Bruce to sing them. Bring in a good singer, perform them, make a club tour. I think it would rock, and he has loads of stuff. And Kiss, they ain't playing any of those songs, and the fans just want to hear them. As long as they don't do them on the cruise, Bruce should make a club tour and get over the solo stuff that he's been doing. Maybe include maybe 1 or 2 Union songs, but I mean, play those 80s and early 90s Kiss songs on a club tour. It would be awesome.
And I guess, why couldn't it work? Look at John Corabi right now, Motley Crue. He's out there doing the whole Motley Crue 94 album in small clubs, but he is doing an incredible job with that album that people did not get to respect or hear, and the buzz has been very positive about it. Again, you can't really judge it by a YouTube video. He's killing it. So he's not exactly that much more visible than Bruce as a, rock star these days. They're both a bit niche, from, being has-beens from, a past era that's no longer as popular. So why couldn't he? Why doesn't he do something like Jakey Lee, in his Red Dragon Cartel, or Back Country Communion or whatever that Glenn Hughes project was. Why isn't he hooking up with some other guys, George Lynch and Robert Sweet hooked up together, why isn't he getting himself out there and maybe doing something valid, getting a singer who can do some of those deep cuts from Kiss and writing some new material? If John Regan and Todd can get together and do 4 by Fate, why can't Bruce? It would be great, and from a selfish perspective, it'd be wonderful to hear him in America, because he's only done it for the Aussies, hearing some King of the Mountain, Oh, he did it there as well. So it's only we're who neglected. So it'd be fantastic to hear that stuff. I'd love to go see him in a club playing Hell or High Water or When Your Walls Come Down, whatever. Tears Are Falling. I don't really mind who the singer is as long as he can do a respectable job and maybe put his own interpretation on it. But Bruce, come on.
Radiation suit.
And as long as the singer for Tears Are Falling does the little windshield too, because that's kind of important.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how many tours Bruce has done since he got shot, but I don't know. That might have something to do with the reason. He's in Grand Funk now, but was that a solo show of his that he was in?
No, he was just at a show.
That's right. The memory's a little foggy on that one.
Yeah, and that was just by happenstance. It wasn't it wasn't a dime bag. They weren't aiming for Bruce. He was just, I believe, happened to get hit.
That was a scary time because that wasn't too far after Mark St. John died.
Yeah, 2007, Mark passed.
That was a scary time, That happened, and then Bruce got shot, and then, you never know sometimes with all this stuff. We take Ace and Peter for granted, but there'll be a time where they're not around anymore. And, it makes you wonder what Gene and Paul are going to say. Are they going to completely change their tune back to they were great guys and this and that and the other? All the things you wish they'd say now. But when that time comes, you wonder what the reaction is going to be from the others.
Yeah, for that sort of thing, if they're as respectful to one another as they were on stage at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, that's adequate. They're the ones, each of them individually, who've got the emotional baggage of their relationships. The fans, they're not part of it. They're not part of Paul's relationship with Gene or Ace or Peter and vice versa between them. And that really, I've always kind of felt, is none of our business, because that's a very personal thing, to have been in a band with someone, to have built something, and for it to have gone different directions for the people. I just hope I think they will. They'll be respectful of each other, and I hope they're around long enough for Peter to finish that rock and roll album.
Yeah, definitely. Been hearing about that since he left the band, 2001, somewhere around there.
What about the Bruce Kulick book then? Bruce Kulick has talked about writing a book for like 5, 6, 7 years. I don't know what he's waiting for.
I don't think Bruce would step on any toes, though. I don't think you really get a lot of...
Lame. Maybe it would be lame. Yeah, unfortunately.
I mean, I'm sure there'd be a couple good stories in there.
Yeah.
But overall, he's not going to, even if he saw things that, he knows, he's not going to throw it out there in a book, because that'd be like Tommy putting a book out.
But he did some quite interesting stuff on the albums he was involved in. On his website, he wrote a little stuff about all the albums he was involved in, and also about the tours. Maybe he could dig a little bit deeper there and find positive, interesting material that he could present in a book. You don't have to write, a tell-all book with a lot of dirt in order for it to be a great read. So hopefully that will be what he's aiming at, and I think it can be quite good. But if you're looking for dirt, you shouldn't be reading Bruce Kulick's book.
Yeah, and Bruce has done some great features on his website writing about the songs. I'd love to see him do some more of that, maybe going into the tours. Obviously, his early tours with George McRae and Andrea True, and obviously Meatloaf. Blackjack, Michael Bolton. I mean, come on, Bruce. Let's have some stories. I mean, at least get them up on your website. I don't know how many people are really going to want to read about Michael Bolton in the Kiss Army, but, Blackjack was a pretty decent band for the time. I just like to hear some road stories, little vignettes of his life. If he doesn't want to publish a book or doesn't feel he's got the material or has other limitations, there's a lot he can tell us about. And he certainly writes,
I'm sure
in a
he'll
nice
write
way.
One at some point.
It's
inevitable. How many times did Paul say he wasn't going to write a book? So.
Well, he wouldn't write a book until everyone else wrote theirs, so that he could have the last
Paul
word.
Had no interest in Paul had no interest in doing a reality show. Paul had no interest in writing an autobiography. Just like Gene had no interest in getting married. Eventually, you know, everything that they say, the opposite's going to happen at some point. That's in the Kiss world. That's just what I expect at this point. You know. Mm-hmm.
Hey, we all change our minds, don't we? You know, I've pressed the self-destruct button on the FAQ message board and said never again.
Don't
And
that's all right. We'll just head over to TTS. Oh, it is. I never.
That's long gone. Yeah. But I think we should probably think about wrapping up so that we can keep this nice and tight. Alex, you know, thanks for joining late. I'm going to do a little feature here at the end. For those of you who remember on the website, I used to do a demo of the week. It was kind of a hidden feature that I put up in MP3, and it was kind of hidden on the site, so a lot of people may not have known about it, but there was some good stuff up on there. I'm going to play a little bit of a reel I sold at auction last year that people have asked about. All for Nothing, the outtake from Ace's 1978 solo album. There's a really crappy sound quality rehearsal that circulates that you can barely hear kind of the structure of the song. You can hear where he's kind of going with the chorus, I believe. But musically, you don't get an idea. Now, years ago, I bought this reel. I never had it restored or professionally transferred, so this is just the rough transfer. But if you marry up the riff that you're about to hear with that really garbage-sounding demo, you can tell that they're the same thing. And there were a couple of takes of that on the reel and an instrumental of I'm in Need of Love. So here's 30 seconds of All for Nothing, and I hope you guys on the call can hear it. All right, got to keep that short. That does not generally circulate. But what you can tell from that is that it does not work with the rest of the album. You know, even as a bass, a bed track that doesn't have any lead work, doesn't have any vocals, isn't fully produced. Again, it's just a demo from early on in the sessions. Completely different style to what Ace put on his album. But there you go.
It has potential.
That's a little bit. Thoughts on that, guys?
Pull it out and 40 years later and inspire him to work on it a little bit more.
Hopefully he'll put it out on some record. He was lately talked about releasing his tracks from the elder sessions. You know, in Ace in the Hole, his own studio. He's supposed to have been recorded quite a few tracks in that studio, and he has been talking lately about maybe releasing it, but you know, it's Ace. Maybe he could include this one as well, but you never know with Ace. He's kind of erratic.
I think it's just exciting to hear something, especially the creative process of it on the album, especially because it became such a big seller, and that's also another one of my favorite albums. I mean, it's a solid all the way through. I mean, it's one of the ones that's all 9 tracks are on my iPhone. I can't ever just take one track off or 2 tracks off. So if he ever does a box set or just a release of some unreleased tracks, I hope he throws it on there and include a few liner notes about the track.
All right, so let's think about final words. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope we haven't given you a headache. You know, as we wrap up here, just like to remind everyone that right now, hopefully showing it on screen without too much reflection. JR and the boys, that's Moose, that's Mick, that's also Rick Monroe. Finally, after many years of effort, challenge, have got their book out. And if you want to hear stories from the road, from the voice and in the words of those guys who were out on the road with Kiss in the early days, then Out on the Streets is pretty much your only hope. The guys had a great deal of challenge getting this book out. So track it down, pick it up, and hope you enjoy it. You know, again, it's written in their voice. It's not written by a professional writer making it all sound purdy for you. So that's a book that's currently out. As we wrap up, just like to thank Nigel, Daniel, and Alex for, getting together to bring the first episode of the KissFAQ podcast to everyone, and hopefully we'll get to do this again. Guys, final words?
Yep, first of all, thanks, Julian. Second of all, it's great to be a part of one of these. I've been a fan and been watching them for a long, long time, and hopefully this one brings something unique and different to the table, and I look forward to hearing all the rest of the episodes.
I think this was a great first session. Hopefully people from all over the world will feel that they want to tell us their stories, and maybe we can bring an international take on this whole Kiss thing that we all love, and not only the American view of it. So my hope is that next episode we'll have one guy from Brazil, a girl from somewhere else, and it will be fantastic. Thank you.
Again, thank you. It was a blast. Looking forward to future episodes doing this, and I love the international aspect of it. Nothing against the other great podcasts that are out there, but I like the diversity. Being from Washington, D.C., I'm used to diversity, and having, my classroom was full of kids from other countries, and so to do a podcast like this with regards to one of the greatest bands in the world, international, is great.
All right, you hear it, people. If you're out there, you're Australian, New Zealand, Brazil, you're female, drop us a line on the board.